journalists are being murdered. Not just in war-torn Iraq, but in democracies like Russia and Mexico. A deadly censorship tactic. Next on Global Pulse. News media are under assault in troubled nations like Venezuela and Pakistan.
GeoTV was the third channel to be blocked in the country.
But the murder of journalists has become a crisis. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, in war-torn Iraq, 98 reporters have been killed over the last dozen years. While in Russia, a nation at peace, 44 reporters have been murdered. The Washington Post reports that in America's nearest neighbor, Mexico, 30 journalists have been killed or kidnapped in the last 6 years. The national news media covered the murders in Russia and Mexico, but in very different ways.
On Friday, a bit after 7 p.m., Amado Ramirez, our Acapulco correspondent, was executed.
Besides his 14 years as a Televisa correspondent in Acapulco, Amado Ramirez dedicated the last 4 years of his life to the newscast Al Tanto, transmitted by the Radio Rama Group. Israel Havana de los Santos, a producer of this newscast, revealed that, for about a month, his colleague was receiving death threat calls.
Mexican President Calderón issued a statement, and the Mexican government began to plan action.
The government of Felipe Calderón issued a communique undoubtedly motivated by this incident. The statement says, the government of the Republic strongly condemns attempts against media representatives and reiterates its commitment to fight head-on against organized crime. At the Chamber of Deputies, legislators will vote today on a statement condemning the death of our colleague.
2 suspects were caught and charged with the murder.
2 suspects in the assassination of the journalist Amado Ramirez are in provisional detention in Acapulco. The investigations in the case continue, with 10 witnesses making identifications and moving towards arraigning the suspects within 30 days.
But in Russia, there have been no arrests in response to the October murder of a high-profile journalist, as state broadcaster Russia Today reported.
Anna Politkovskaya, the murdered Russian journalist, will be buried later at the Traygurovskaya cemetery in Moscow. She was shot dead at her doorway on Saturday.
A stream of people and a sea of flowers, a tribute to the memory of the assassinated journalist. Anna Politkovskaya wrote of issues that other journalists preferred to avoid. Several times she received death threats from those whose crimes she exposed. Friends who knew her are convinced she was killed for what she wrote.
Despite promises to act, the case remains unsolved. But only 5 months later...
Meanwhile, here in Moscow, the funeral of Russian journalist Ivan Safronov...
Another prominent Russian journalist met his death. Russia Today was unwilling to call it murder.
Kommersant newspaper's military correspondent fell to his death from a 5th-floor window on Friday. Investigators from the prosecutor's office say they're dealing with a suicide, but the journalist's friends and colleagues question this. They believe the death may be linked to his professional activities.
Now we turn to Russia, where...
With this death, news programs worldwide reacted and criticized Russia for its lack of action.
Another funeral for a Russian reporter. And chilling proof, say some, that press freedom is dead. Ivan Safronov, an outspoken military affairs correspondent for a major Russian newspaper, is the 14th high-profile journalist to die in mysterious circumstances since Russian President Vladimir Putin took office 7 years ago. No case has ever been solved.
To pay tribute to those who died.
Russia Today acknowledged the problem, but quickly offered its own spin.
Russia is considered among the most dangerous countries to be a reporter. Concerns over politicians' involvement in an investigation are not limited to Russia. All over the Congress Hall were posters of Terry Lloyd, a British television reporter killed in Iraq in 2003. An inquest into his death concluded that he was killed by US troops, but his colleagues doubt his killers will ever face justice.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only US network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.